you give me the names and titles of the people with direct firsthand knowledge and access to some of this crash retrieval, some of these crash retrieval programs, maybe which facilities, military bases the recovered material would be?
I can't discuss that publicly, but I did provide that information both to the Intel committees and the Inspector General.
And we could get that in the SCIF if we were allowed to get in a SCIF with you. Would that be probably what you would think?
Sure, if you had the appropriate accesses.
Honey, won't you get inside my skiff? I'll give you clearance if you let me kiss your lips. Tell you about the glowing celestial ships. If you let me lay my head upon your hips. It's so lonely in my skiff. Can't make love to a secret. Can't kiss your secrets on the lips. There are so many secrets I cannot tell, but the biggest one is I like to ring the wedding bell. Bend the knee and say, will you marry me? We marry me inside my skiff. I know you don't want to marry me, but if you spend a little time with me, then maybe my last name will be Grassley. How could I not give you access to my heart? Inside my skiff is where the rest of our life starts. The greatest mystery is how I live without you and you live without me. Honey, won't you get inside my skiff?
That, of course, is the top 40 song Get Inside My Skiff by Justin Bieber. And you can find that everywhere. It's Spotify, streamable, YouTube, Twitter, X, and of course, Apple Music, iTunes, and on mini iPods, which is really weird because iPods are hard to find these days, and it just appeared in a bunch of iPods, and everyone's freaking out about that. But if you ask me, we just have to lift up our legs and float downstream. Why is this song appearing in various technological systems when it wasn't uploaded by anybody? And Justin Bieber says that he has no idea who did this or where it came from, and also that he can't talk about anything related to the song because of various NDAs he signed. But if you ask me, it is a Bieber banger, and I love it. What a podcast we have for you today. My friends, Ryan Bledsoe is here with us today. I hope you will consider checking out his dad's amazing book, UFO of God, The Extraordinary True Story of Chris Bledsoe. And I'll just quote Jim Simivan, former CIA Director of Operations. Chris has probably been visited officially and unofficially by more government types and UFO researchers than any other contactee or experiencer. Strap in, friends. The Bledsoe story is incredible. And in light of the recent UFO disclosure hearings that just happened, I hope that you will listen to this story and maybe put your skepticism on the shelf and consider that stories like the one that you're about to hear might not be as incredible as they seemed a few weeks ago. Chris is a wonderful person, a friend of mine, and he has a fantastic podcast called Bledsoe Said So. I was on that podcast. It is a spiritual podcast that explores the spiritual dimension of UAPs and the ever-growing number of strange phenomena being recorded and reported, not just by families like the Bledsoes, but by high-ranking military officials. Join me now. Let's fly into the celestial dimensions with the wonderful Ryan Bledsoe. Ryan Bledsoe, welcome to the DTFH. I just want to start off by thanking you. I know this is probably a very, very busy week for you, and I'm really grateful that you're spending some time with me on this amazing week where we have just had the most insane level of disclosure, a historic level of disclosure. Thanks for being here. How are you feeling right now in this moment in history where the things that you and your family have been talking about, have done documentaries about, have been researched by various networks and government agencies? How does it feel right now to suddenly have the things that many people would roll their eyes at, the stories that you've told, suddenly becoming more credible? What's that like for you?
First of all, thank you. Very happy and excited to be here. I very much appreciate it. And just rolling right into it, it feels good. It feels like, I hate to say it, but it feels like vindication is finally coming. You know, our experiences started in 2007, and it's been, going on 17 years now that we've been fighting to get it out, and now it seems like everyone's ready to hear it. So it's awesome. I mean, it couldn't be a better time for our family.
Right. Yeah, it is vindication. That is what it is. No pun intended, full disclosure on my part, when I first heard about your story, I doubted it. And I think anyone with a rational mind, when they hear that your dad has some capacity or some connection with these anomalous orbs that just appear around him, around your property, anybody's going to be like, come on. That doesn't make sense. Yeah. What is that? It's a fraud. It's a scam. It's flares, fireworks, something.
Swamp gas,
some form of trickery. But then, the more I looked into your story, and obviously the simultaneous sort of slow drip disclosure that's happening, I no longer doubt it. And I just find it fascinating that we are getting to experience a moment in history where the stories like the story of your family and the countless other stories that have been discounted by people who are habitually skeptical, habitually, quote, rational, are going to become accepted. Like, it's going to require a complete revision of what most people imagine reality is. And part of that is going to be to go back and look at stories like yours with this new eye, that's pretty cool, man. That's pretty exciting.
Sounds a lot like you're describing awakening, if I must say so myself. And yeah, it's going to require an awakening for sure. An awakening to a new knowledge of what's possible, like getting rid of the old box of, you live 70 years and you go to hell. Well, maybe the story is much better than that. You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying? Like the old conventional religious understanding of things, it's so much more complex. Do you mind if I do a quick little shameless plug? You said something there that sparked...
No, I want you to do the plug. Please plug.
You said full disclosure, and I had to take that opportunity. I have a Patreon show called Full Disclosure where, actually, believe it or not, I was very much inspired by a friend of ours. We both know him very well. His name is Clancy from the Midnight Gospel, and he does a meta podcast series. And so I've been doing that myself. And I found that doing, Bledsoe Said So and Full Disclosure has helped me tremendously let go a lot of the trauma of being an individual who's speaking publicly for, however many years. My dad since 2008 and me since, a few years ago. He's a lot older than me naturally. And taking the Clancy route and doing the podcast and talking about things has really helped me to come into a better understanding of what it means to like stand in your truth, like it doesn't matter
Right.
that they don't care or they don't want to listen. And then the last thing, getting those two out of the way, is my dad, before we go into this very deep rabbit hole, my dad does have a brand new book, UFO of God by Chris Bledsoe. Very deep, highly recommend it. It is a full telling of the story, and yeah, so there it is.
Before as we dive into this rabbit hole, maybe you could give a quick synopsis of the story of your family, the story of your dad,
Sure.
For folks who maybe aren't familiar with it.
Okay, sure. It all started in 2007. So I'm turning 30 in a week and a half. I was 13 when it started. So just the sense of how long my family's been dealing with this kind of behind the scenes. So 2007, it all began. My dad, my eldest brother, Chris Jr., and 3 of their construction subcontractors. My brother was working with my dad at 16, 17 years old that early. And they had subcontractors there with them. And they were out in North Carolina on the Cape Fear River out in Fayetteville, where we're all from. Yeah. It was January 8th. I have to think. It's Elvis's birthday. I remember it was Elvis's birthday. And they're out on the Cape Fear River fishing after finishing a big project. My dad, I'm not going to go into incredible detail. It's all in the book, but he was a very successful, basically like a construction mogul in our town, like huge multi-million-dollar construction empire. My mom had the real estate side of that business, and together they were just churning out hundreds of houses a year, and it was a huge operation. And long story short, my dad was very ill with Crohn's disease, which was an incurable disease, or still is, I should say. And it caused him to have so much debilitating stress he couldn't manage. There were things going on, and the business crashed, and we went bankrupt as a family. I was like 11, 12 years old. The sheriffs are coming and repossessing a lot of our stuff. It was a very crisis-like time in our house. My dad sitting me on his lap crying, "I'm sorry, I can't buy you Christmas presents this year," digging for pennies for lunch, that kind of situation, like going from millions to nothing. And that was just before the UFO stuff started. So we were in a crisis-like situation, and my dad was suicidal. I mean, he had multiple suicidal attempts, loved his kids too much, couldn't go through with it. And so fast forward to that night in 2007, he's out there on the river, and he's ready to end his life. And they're out there fishing, and they're, the 3 subcontractors are having a good time. My brother's doing the best he can, having a good time. And my dad is just like walking off by himself to pray. I did forget to mention we were a deeply Pentecostal holiness family, which is like extreme Christianity. For those who don't know what that means, that's
Speaking
like 2
in tongues.
Yes.
Snake handling.
Yes. And it's like 2 steps below Amish, So my dad's walking off into the woods by himself, and he's praying, "God, I can't do this anymore. Kill me or heal me. You got to take my life, or you got to turn it around," right? So getting into the event now, he starts walking away from the river, away from where all the guys are fishing. And the trail down into the river is about a half-mile walk in a very deeply wooded, narrow path that only one car can go. So he's walking up this path, and he starts hearing things in the woods. And he's like, whoa, he's looking around. He's been a big game hunter and fisher his entire life. He had the record largest bear killed in North Carolina for many years, like a 600-plus pound bear. Wasn't scared of the woods. This scared him. This was the first time he had been ever scared in the woods at some strange sound. He's on his hand and knees looking under the brush like, what is that? Is it a turkey? Is it a fox? Is it a coyote? He doesn't know. So he keeps walking up this trail. Again, it's about half mile, so it's kind of a long walk. And he's looking. He's hearing these rustling. When he stops, the sound stops. His hair standing up on his head. So he gets to the top of the hill. And when he gets to the top, he sees these 2 supermassive orange orbs. He calls them like balls of fire, and they look like the setting sun up in the horizon. And first thought is like, oh, the sun's setting. Wait a minute, there's not 2 suns. So immediately he's freaking out. Oh my God, It's got to be an alien invasion situation. He turns around to run, but then when he looks back one more time to take a glance at them, a third one shoots up. This is about 5:30 in the afternoon in a January winter evening where it gets dark early. So it's like, the sun's starting to set anyway. The very next thing he remembers, he's back by the fire. The fire's out. The truck is moved. Everybody's like, "Chris, where have you been? Where have you been?" By that time, my brother, Chris Jr., comes out of the woods screaming, I mean, he's only 16, 17 at the time. He's hysterically screaming and crying, "Dad, where have you been? I saw these creatures in the woods. There's all this chaos." He's like, "These creatures, they had red eyes." And my dad's like, "I just saw UFOs." Then, pandemonium ensues. The subcontractors realize they're not messing with them. And they're like, "We've been looking for you for hours." One of them shouts, "Look," and they look up in the sky, and there's like 8 or 9 different big white lights up where the stars are. They scramble around, and then a few of them shoot over to the other side of the Cape Fear River, like 50 to 100 yards away. They're freaking out. They get in the truck. They rush out of there, and by the time they get through that narrow path that I was telling you about that my dad walked up, and they get it's a hill. It's an inclined path back up to the main road. And when they get out there, they stop, and one of these massive, super massive, you could call it an orb, you could call it a craft, whatever, but it was a gigantic, oblong-like, teardrop-shaped, spiky, you could call it a vessel, but it was made of pure glowing light. And it was on the road in front of them, blocking their path, almost like teasing them, like, "You're not going anywhere."
Wow.
Eventually it moves. They take off in the truck. Everybody's screaming, "It's the end of the world. I want to go see my wife first. I want to go see mine."
Yeah.
And my dad's driving, so he gets home last. By the time he gets the other guys home, when they get to our house, and nobody was there that night. Me, my other brother, my sister, and my mom, we were across town staying with her mother because she has she's an older widow who had a fear of staying alone, so she always needed someone to stay with her if her son.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, nobody was there except my dad and my brother. They get home. They start seeing lights in the backyard, hearing the dogs barking, and they come face to face. My dad comes face to face with a 3 to 4 foot tall entity in the backyard with a triangle on his chest. It's translucent. It was the same entities that my brother saw in the woods that, they eventually figured out they were seeing the same thing. And when my dad saw this entity face to face, it flashed into his mind, "I'm here. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you." So the next night, there's a lot more detail in the book. I'm trying to skim through, but the next night, I'm still, across town with my grandma, my mom, and my other siblings. My dad and my brother are still there. We don't all know about this yet. And the next night happens again. Dogs start barking. There's a light in the backyard. My dad goes out there with a rifle this time. He's like, "I'm going to end this so that my son's not suffering. It's terrifying him, this kind of situation. He thinks he's going to kill it." He goes back there. He comes face to face with one of these entities again, and he drops the rifle, and it flashes in him this overwhelming, compelling, sort of transformative message of complete compassion for all universal life, never to harm any more living beings, to treat things with love. He stopped hunting. My dad, he's 61 years old. He still won't kill a bug anymore.
Wow.
I'll smash a roach and my dad gets mad at me. It changed him. I forgot to mention he came back. He was in complete remission of Crohn's, never took a medication for it again.
Wow.
His Crohn's disease was healed. And that's the short version. There's a lot more detail, like the missing time. I mean, if you guys caught, the audience, if you noticed, his perspective was he got back to the fire, but in reality, he was missing for 4 hours. And
where was he?
He was on board that big shiny thing of light. And so the Discovery Channel ended up getting involved. Long story short there, we get home a couple days later. I get off the school bus. It's the South, so a lot of your neighbors are your family members, quite literally. My grandfather and my grandmother were my next-door neighbor. I go over after school, and I'm like getting there to hang out with them like I did every day after school, and they say, "Boy, your dad's been smoking dope, and he saw green booger men in the woods." And I was like, "What?"
Wow.
That's the first I heard of it. There's no cell phones on 13-year-old kids back in 2007,
Yeah.
I get over there. Dad starts telling me about it. We're all excited as kids, we believe. My mom is like, "Hell no. This is evil. This is demonic. I don't want anything to do with this. Don't talk about my children. This isn't going to work." There was about a 10-month period where my dad was too terrified to report the experience because of my mom pressuring him like, "This is not going to work out. Our marriage will end. You will lose your children over this. I'm not going to be associated with this." There was literally a time, I can never forget this, one of my very most traumatic memories, at 13 years old, of seeing a Baptist minister come into our house and try to exorcise the devil out of my dad.
Wow.
And that didn't go over very well. And long story short, 10 months go by. My dad reports it. We're sitting around one night watching this dinky UFO show back in 2007. And it was like UFO Files with Bill Burns or one of those type shows. And it says, if you've had a sighting, report at MUFON.com. And he finally sent the report, and the rest is history. Very quickly, they were on our property doing a full-scale investigation funded by Bigelow. We can get more into this later as much as you want to.
Now, see, that's what, that's where it gets double weird.
It gets weirder.
Like, obviously, that's almost as weird as it can get. Someone who is, like, physically and mentally diseased, basically. I mean, I don't know other way to describe it when you are considering ending your own life. Prays, has pretty much the classic biblical angelic encounter, which is when they talk to you, the first thing they try to do is calm you down. I'm not here to hurt you. Be not afraid is how it gets translated in the Bible. But
yeah, good
that's
point.
Essentially what they told your dad. Be not afraid. A revelation is given along with healing, on all levels. And then, it continues with the biblical archetype, which is then you try to like integrate that into your default reality mode and the people within your default reality mode, and you get rejected.
Yeah.
Either it's a demon, you're smoking dope, you've gone nuts, and it's like the world wants to suppress this info. It almost reflexive suppression. No, that's not real. I don't believe what you're saying. But there's this, he contacts a government agency, and they show up.
Oh, it was immediately they showed up. I'm talking immediately. Like, we had a documentary out in about a year's time from the moment he hit report, and that was including showing up just a few months later, doing a full-scale investigation with the president of the organization and a Homeland Security / DIA agent and an FBI agent doing the investigation. And then it was like a few months of editing, boom, documentary's out. And let me tell you, Duncan, it didn't make us look good. And we can go as deep into this as you would like. This might be a lot for people to digest, but it is in fact true, and there are receipts of this. In the very introduction of my book, I know that most people will probably listen, but you can see here, Colonel John Alexander, I know it's in reverse, but Colonel John Alexander is the introduction. That's the guy that George Clooney is portraying in The Men Who Stare at Goats, the whole psychic spy program thing.
Yeah.
You'll see him in the History Channel episode coming out on August 1st. And then the forward is I know it's in reverse, but Jim Simivan.
It's not in reverse.
Oh, cool.
Jim
It is for me.
Former CIA clandestine directorate of operations.
Also the vice president of To the Stars with Tom DeLonge. These folks are in the book clearly stating in their tenure and experience at these clandestine agencies in the Department of Defense that our family did end up being the most studied UFO contactee family in history. It's written
in history.
In history.
So it's one. You have to wonder what compelled them to show up so quickly. Why your family? Why? I mean, I can't even imagine if you have like a UFO hotline, how many people call you, trolls, people who actually haven't seen anything and, just saw a satellite or whatever. You can't even imagine like how that works, but you have to wonder why your family, why did they gravitate towards you? Why did they come to you?
I can tell you what they said. In 2008, well, technically he reported it in 2007. He waited about 10 months. I believe it was October of 2007. He reported it on MUFON.com. Within a week, they were sending us mail, like, draw what you experienced, draw it, send it back. And then it was like, can we come to your house? Yes. MUFON was an organization. By the way, MUFON was the follow-up of Project Blue Book. I'm jumping ahead here. I'm bringing this up because you just did a stream on the hearings today, and Blue Book was one of the things mentioned. Yes. NRO, a lot of these things that you've heard mentioned, these programs actually were at our property investigating my family in an official capacity. So Project Blue Book was headed by Alan J. Hynek. His number 2 in charge was a NASA scientist named Dr. Harold Povidmeyer. He was one of the very first NASA scientists that showed up on our property told us.
NASA scientist.
Yes, and CIA as well. Many of these NASA folks, after you've known them for many years, they end up telling you, well, I'm also a CIA analyst. I just haven't been able to tell you. They're all dipping. They're double dipping.
Need top-notch cardiology care? Shenango Valley Cardiology Consultants, part of Meadville Medical Center, is here for you. Serving Mercer County and Ohio, our expert providers offer dedicated heart health services at 2999 Innovation Way in Hermitage, Pennsylvania, and 880 West Liberty Street in Hubbard, Ohio. For appointments, call 724-983-1800 for Hermitage or 330-269-1916 for Hubbard. More info at nmchs.org. Choose Shenango Valley Cardiology Consultants.
TripAdvisor called Philadelphia one of the top destinations in America in 2025. That's right, from sea to shining sea. Philly was also just voted the most walkable city to visit in the country by readers of USA Today for the third year running. And the rave reviews on the city's restaurant scene? Well, they just keep on coming. Did these accolades surprise you? They shouldn't. Philadelphia is what you expect. The Bell, the Hall, Rocky, classics. But Philly is a whole lot more. Magic Gardens, Eastern State Penitentiary, murals galore, and the list goes on. Wander neighborhoods like Fishtown and Northern Liberties, where creativity spills onto the streets. Philly doesn't just welcome you, it draws you in with every step. Now's the perfect time to get to know Philly better. Come for Rocky, stay for Renoir. Come for the cheesesteaks, stay for the Haitian spaghetti. Come for the American history, stay for the Southeast Asian market. Come for Philadelphia, stay for Philly. Book your stay now and enjoy free hotel parking. Go to visitphilly.com to get started.
So this is the summary of it all. Suddenly, people from various government agencies are investigating your family with not just once. They're coming back to the point where
they're still coming.
But you've become friends with many of them.
Yes.
There's a connection now. So this, and you're showing me in your book, it's like they're writing forwards to your book. This isn't making stuff up. These people are interested in whatever happened to you and your dad and your family. And not just that, and this is the most insane part, the fact that it keeps happening.
It's still happening.
He can basically, I mean, is it wrong to say that he can call these things, that he somehow has the ability to reach out and then they just show up?
That's actually scientifically about to be confirmed in the August 1st History Channel of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. It's hard. You put me in a hard spot because it's like, there's a difference between, I can call in UFOs, but also like trying to be humble and convey the truth that it actually is happening. You see what I mean? But yes, it does happen that way. And he'll never admit that he calls them in. What my father says is he prays and they appear when they're ready. It's a mutual respect and connection. But to go back to your previous question, why us? Why did they swarm us? Well, I'll tell you what they told. So when my dad hit that report in 2008, immediately they were in touch. They were like, can we come? And it snowballed into this mainstream or, mainline government investigation. What they told us was, from the images that my dad and my brother drew and from the descriptive language that they used, they knew that they were telling the truth because there had been reports of entities exactly like this in the 1950s. And when they came to our house, they actually had diagrams drawn in the 1950s, and they were to the symbols, to the T. They were exactly identical to what my dad and my brother had reported. And they knew that it was true. And what they're telling us now, what many of these CIA folks and so on are telling us now, is that they know that there is some sort of impending consciousness shift type event where the phenomenon will basically get the news out and there's nothing really anybody can do about it. You know, there's nothing that the government they can, you know, they can act like it's locked behind all the secrecy, but in reality, when the phenomenon's ready, it will be made manifest in front of the world. And they know they've known that this was
What do
the
you
real
mean
deal.
made manifest in front of the world? What do you mean, like a visitation?
Some sort
like
of revelation.
So, because, you know, this is, now that this has gone way above ground, now the toothpaste is, especially after today, after these hearings, the toothpaste is way out of the tube. Like, it's not going back in.
Never.
And the world of the professional UFO debunker, the professional UFO skeptic just got much smaller, much more difficult. Like, how do you, as one of these people who, some of them have made a career out of debunking, defaming, diminishing people like you, others like you, how do you now continue on when you have, in that hearing, 3 very high-ranking officials in various capacities in the government, pilots, intelligence, saying under oath, no, we, not only are we seeing these things, 90% of them, 95% of them, I think it was 95% are going unreported,
right,
for fear of having your career devastated by talking about it. I mean, so why disclosure now? And to me, the most efficient answer is because they want to get ahead of the curve. Because they, just like what you're saying, something's coming and they don't want it to come and without them at least seeming like they made some attempt at letting people know, or people are going to be pissed. What do you mean? Why didn't you tell us? You knew this was happening and you kept it a secret?
I'm not going to do a skiff situation here. Look, I've never signed any document other than like History Channel saying that I won't spoil the episode that's only coming out in 6 days. I've never signed any document that I can't reveal these secrets. I'm just going to lay all my cards out on the table. When I was 15 years old, this individual named Harold Povenmire, he's pretty heavily referenced in my dad's book because he's the first NASA scientist that he literally got in the car one day, drove 12 hours from Cape Canaveral all the way to North Carolina, knocked on the door. I'm playing Xbox in my pajamas, and I answer the door, and he says, "Is this Chris Bledsoe's house?" And I'm like, Mom, can you call Dad? NASA's here, kind of situation. Like, that really happened. And next thing you know, he's in our family for the next 11 years until he passed away. And he told us when I was about 15 years old, he said, now keep in mind, when I was 15 years old, this was the year 2008. So imagine how long I've been holding my breath. He said by the year 2025, all of disclosure is going to be laid out for humanity to know all of the answers, and everybody's going to know everything by the year 2025.
Wow.
He told me that in 2008.
Wow.
Now, fast forward a little bit. After the documentary came out in 2008, I did forget to mention that they got a Harvard psychotherapist involved who was a student and a protege of John Mack, who's like the most famous alien hypnotherapist guy out there. I'm sure lots of people who listen have heard of John Mack. So this guy was a protege of the late John Mack. He does a hypnotic regression on my dad. He was able to recall the missing 4 hours with his initial sighting where he was gone. And we can go into that if you'd like, but just the reason I bring that up is he was suggested that he would remember his experiences going forward and that they would no longer be unconscious or experienced in like a trance-like state. So 5 years go by.
Wait, I would love for you to go into that a little bit. Like, what did he remember? What happened to him during that period of missing time?
Okay, sure. So when he saw the 2 and then he turned to run and then he looked back and he saw the 3rd one, they came and approached him and came so close to him that he could see the spikes of light coming off of them, and he reached out and touched it, and next thing he knew, he was in a dark room, and there were 4 entities in front of him. They were 7 to 8 feet tall, not like the 3 to 4 foot tall ones. And anyway, so there's these 3 to I can't remember. Look, I wasn't there. It was my dad who was there, and I've been hearing his version of this for 16 years. It was 3 to 4 entities in this room. And they approach him and they say, "We're not going to hurt you." My dad is sobbing hysterics. "Where's my
Sorry,
son?"
what did they look like? What did they look like? Were they grays? Like what?
They were really tall. They looked similar to your typical description of like what an alien might look like, but they shine like light. They glowed. They weren't, they weren't so, knock on wood, physical. They were more translucent, like spiritual type entities.
Okay.
And they had these really big heads and big eyes, but when they talked, their mouths didn't move. Never. None of these entities that my dad has experienced, their mouths never moved. It was all in the head. And they
this
said,
is, by the way, this is, just to give it some context, this is the report that you get when people are abducted or make contact with these beings, is there seems to be some telepathic component. They speak, I guess it's kind of like, not to like reduce it to psychedelic terms, but it's like the way the mushroom talks to you. It's not like you see a mouth or anything. It's like it's pulsing information to you that you
right.
that you're grokking, so to speak, but you're not like hearing a voice necessarily. It's imparting information in this way that it would almost feel like it was your thoughts or your deeper self or something like that.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense with the mushroom comparison. But they said basically like, don't worry about Chris Jr. He's safe, and we're watching over him. And they said that they were the guardians of nature and all life, that they served the universal force of creation. They didn't come right out and be like, "Behold, we're biblical angels, we serve God." They didn't say that. They said that they serve creation, and that they tend to human life like a terrarium or a garden, that they maintain our biological evolution over the aeons to make sure that we're evolving according to the plan of creation, and that they protect us from negative interdimensional forces, that they keep us on track for our destiny, so to speak. And they showed him the pyramids, and they showed him some other strange types of entities that were like, sort of like, one thing they showed him was like, you could imagine a dog with like a duck bill, with like duck feet, like some things that they've been working on that was just like, we're going to scrap that kind of deal, that they created.
They're going to scrap the duck dog?
Well, they got
Really?
the platypus, so.
Okay, right. We already got the platypus. It's cute enough. Duck dog's a little creepy, probably super annoying.
They conveyed that they created us. And another thing is they took Dad out to space, whatever that means. I've always wondered my whole life, did they physically take him, or was it more like phased him into a space where everything is metaphorical? I don't know. But my dad has these memories, They took him to space, and they explained to him that there is a negative force in charge in the American and global governments, and that they do not cooperate with these entities. They are very fearful of them, and they showed him an image of these entities. I'm sorry. Let me silence my phone here. That distracted me. They showed him an image of these American government agencies shooting missiles out into space to attack them, and the entities disabled it and was like, they're arrogant in their power. They think they can harm us, but they can't, And they showed him the pyramids.
Wait, sorry. The U.S. government was not attacking the dark entities. They're saying the U.S. government or the military-industrial complex has attempted to shoot missiles at them.
Yes.
They're not into this.
Yes.
Whatever this is, they're not into
that
it.
The human governments fear them. They can't control them. That's what they communicated to my dad. They don't cooperate. And they showed him the pyramids, and then the last thing they showed him was this, I don't know what it means, but it was a supermassive sphere of light. It's floating out somewhere in the cosmos. It was like this enormously supermassive conscious entity of light. Maybe it was God. Maybe it was what we think of Ra or something. I don't know, but it was this entity that supposedly will be returning where we can see it from Earth in a future time. Maybe it's the sun. Maybe there's something with the sun going on, because there's some other stuff with that later. So that was his missing 4 hours there. And then what I was going to say earlier, so that all came back to him. The sad thing is, on the documentary, which the fellow Jim Semivan, who is literally in plain terms, he was the CIA program director for the spy program. He was the head of the spies for the United States Central Intelligence Agency. He told me to my face in my backyard that the Discovery Channel documentary was, in fact, an intelligence operation to kind of shut us down so our story wouldn't spread, because they knew that it was, true, and they didn't want it getting out there. Because at the time, remember, this is pre-Tic Tac video. That was what, 2017, 2016,
Yeah.
when this subject was
2017, I think.
That's when it began declassified and everybody starts seeing all this Tic Tac stuff. Our documentary came out in 2008 when it was classified, so they had to shut us down. They couldn't spin it good, So
Okay, let me stop you there. In the hearings today, this is one of the questions that seems to have been confirmed. Is, I think it was something like, have the intelligence communities been intentionally distorting this data? Like, and the answer is yes. So that has been confirmed, that there has been an active, concerted effort to diminish, reduce, confuse,
silence
any information coming out regarding whatever this is. So you experienced that firsthand. They tried to warp your experience in a way to make it seem non-credible.
In the end of the documentary, they called into question, were we sane or lying or credible? Is it science fiction? And what they did, Duncan, was when they showed up to film, they said they were going to come to our property, and then they said change of plans. Like the morning of, they're in town from LA, this Discovery crew. They're like, change of plans, we're running late. Can you come to our hotel off of I-95? My dad gets there. There's an assistant out front. They whisk him into a room with an FBI agent running a lie detector. The cameras are rolling. It's like, sit down right now and take the lie detector. Nice to meet you, by the way. He sits down. Over 4 hours, they asked him 30-plus questions over and over and over and over. My dad was literally falling asleep. It was so strenuous. And after 4 hours, they finally got a question that said an inconclusive result by his heartbeat because of his anxiety of asking the same 30 questions over and over. And they went and they aired that like my dad was a liar, and they called it into question.
Okay, did they tell your dad you're going to come in for a lie detector test?
No.
They didn't even. They just sprang it on him, ambushed him.
It was like, sit down, cameras are rolling, let's do the test. And they showed it at the end of the documentary.
Assholes. That is bullshit. That's so unethical. That's so fucked up. That's such a breach of trust. I mean, that is fucked up, man. Like,
imagine going to school after that aired. 15 years old.
You have to want, like, if like this continues in the way it's going, and more evidence comes out about these programs that were designed to basically ruin people's lives, you have to, has it occurred to you that you might actually have a lawsuit here? Like, that there's the possibility where you could, like, theoretically, like, to
Never
me,
thought about that.
It seems like if, like, you can prove that your honest experience was intentionally warped to make you seem like an asshole and your family seem like liars or like they're crazy, and this was done on purpose by entities that knew it was true, isn't that like a classic case of slander? Isn't that's defaming you on purpose? Like, I don't know. I think this is part of what, like, the most mundane explanation for why many of these people are threatening folks like you and threatening people in the military-industrial complex and the intelligence field is just because they know they're smoked. Like, this is illegal. It's unconstitutional. And also it's harassment. Like, it's violations of God knows how many laws, and they know that once the dam breaks, they're going to get lawsuits. Like, they're going to get sued, and I know that's a mundane reason. I want the reason to be what you're talking about, which is that, a visitation is coming or something like that. But I feel like many of them are just, they know they're in trouble. This is hot water, man. No matter what, they've broken laws. Like, they've essentially, like, siphoned taxpayer money into private corporations that then are giving them money. They're buying them the reverse engineered tech back at a higher price. There's so many laws that have been broken here. Do you think that is a credible explanation for why they have been so aggressive and violent in the way that they're suppressing this information?
I think you're absolutely right, and there probably is grounds for that. But before I answer that, I want to say on behalf of the Bledsoe family, we're not interested in revenge. We're not interested in trying to go that, negative route. We honestly, we just want to heal as a family, and we want to get our story out there and be listened to and taken seriously.
Right.
We've been shouting it
great.
since 2008 publicly, and
I would be willing to represent you.
You'd be, I would.
If you want to. I mean, I'm not a trained attorney, but I think I could get into the law books and could find something in here. And man, I think we could make a pretty penny off of this, Mr. Bledsoe. I appreciate your positivity. It's beautiful. We love the Angels, just so you know. Here at the Trussell Law Firm, big fan of Angels, big fan of healing, global consciousness shift, but yada, yada, yada. But also we love cold green cash. And I think you got a case here.
We could do like an 80-20 split your way. 80 your way, 20 my way.
I would love to. Oh, no, yeah,
Your
that's
way.
what I like. Okay, yeah, that's great. I mean, that is a kind of friendship deal. We usually charge more, but 80-20 split,
Oh,
that
okay,
makes
cool.
sense.
No,
Yeah,
but
so you had, here's the fantasy. This is the fantasy of many kids, especially if you've seen Firestarter or E.T. or any of the movies where the feds come in and like you are the nucleus of some paranormal extraterrestrial phenomena. And then from that experience, you are like, now you're like magical. And that's the fantasy. You experience that, except when you emerged from the experience, there wasn't magic. It's just people like rolling their eyes at your entire family, people making fun of you, people accusing your father of being a liar or a maniac or a grifter. It's really sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. But I will say, like, healing is coming, and it's okay. If you had asked me a year ago, I would have told you I want revenge. But things change, and we have a very positive outlook. And with the way things, like, look, just me being here right now on the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, if somebody had told me at 13 years old that would happen, I would say, you're out of your mind. And here we are, and like,
That's cool.
Healing is possible. Positivity is a hell of a drug, so to speak. And we don't want revenge. We could be that way, but we just want to share the message. And I wanted to say this to address your previous question, if we thought there was a lawsuit kind of thing. Sure, but also we're very grateful because since 2017 and the D classes happened, there have been, like Jim Simivan, John Alexander, and some others, or, also Hal Pavemar, there have been some very wonderful elements of the CIA and NASA and et cetera, who have helped us and have privately encouraged us to go forward and tell our story. And like, if anybody has a question about that, two of these people are writing in the book and are encouraging my dad to write the second and coaching him on, upcoming chats and things like that. And like, there have been elements of the Department of Defense that have come and helped us. And I feel like, if anybody's seen Stranger Things season 4, I think it's a recent great example where like 11, I'm not sure if you saw it, but like 11 is... She's locked in a government facility, and there's one element of the government trying to kill her, and then there's one trying to save her. It's really like that. It's really like that.
That is the impression that I get. Clearly, there is a power struggle happening within these agencies.
It's true.
Between people who are trying to maintain their grasp on power and people who are recognizing. What's that?
And secrecy.
And people who feel that by doing this, that they are going against the oaths that they took, and that their very integrity is at stake. And more than that, that it is inhumane to conceal this sort of information from humanity. It's a human right to understand what's really going on in the universe that we live in. We're living in, we're like a bird in a cage that someone threw the blanket over. And we think that this is all there is to being a bird, some shadowy, sad cage. We don't even understand what our fucking wings are.
Right.
And, there's people who are in it more and more like pushing back and with success. I mean, now it's pretty much over. Like if you are someone in the intelligence community that has been afraid, and I don't blame you. If you are afraid, I don't blame you. You got kids. You need your paycheck. You need your security clearance. You don't want to like throw away a lifetime of education and building trust and proving yourself. And it sucks that you haven't done that, but I get it, man. I get it. But now it's like the whole thing has been opened up to the point where if you come forward now, you're going to seem like a hero. And, you're much safer now than you were even a year ago coming forward with this information. And that, I think, is going to become increasingly enticing for people who have been holding their tongue. Don't you?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think people are going to start coming out of the woodwork. I mean, we're seeing it now, and like it does sting a little bit, talking about positivity on the one hand, but also it's like we've been coming forward for so many years now, and it's like, if this is what it takes for people to finally listen, then so be it. I'm grateful, but it does sting a little bit that they weren't listening the whole time, but that's just human nature. But,
yeah. I mean, it's a lot to listen to. Like I like initially, especially these days, like all this stuff is coming out that is potentially in human history, one of the greatest events in recorded history, certainly in American history. And there is some frustration initially that I was experiencing when I realized that many people are not as excited as I am. That many people, in fact, don't seem like they want to hear about it at all. Like they're actively trying to ignore it.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to understand more like why.
Need top-notch cardiology care? Shenango Valley Cardiology Consultants, part of Meadville Medical Center, is here for you. Serving Mercer County and Ohio, our expert providers offer dedicated heart health services at 2999 Innovation Way in Hermitage, Pennsylvania, and 880 West Liberty Street in Hubbard, Ohio. For appointments, call 724-983-1800 for Hermitage or 330-269-1916 for Hubbard. More info at mmchs.org. Choose Shenango Valley Cardiology Consultants.
You probably think you know Philadelphia, but how well do you know Philly? Philadelphia is what you expect. The Bell, the Hall, Rocky, cheesesteaks, classics. But Philly is a whole lot more. Come for Rocky, stay for Renoir. Come for the cheesesteaks, stay for the Haitian spaghetti. Come for the American history, stay for the Southeast Asian market. Come for Philadelphia, stay for Philly. Book your stay now and enjoy free hotel parking. Go to visitphilly.com to get started.
Many people are not as excited as I am. That many people, in fact, don't seem like they want to hear about it at all. Like they're actively trying to ignore it.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to understand more like why. It's like people like you have had an extraordinary experience in your own life. I have not had anything as extraordinary as that happened to me, but I've always gravitated towards the paranormal.
Would you like to?
What?
Would you like to have a paranormal experience?
I try to call him. I'm not ashamed of
Fly
saying
out.
that.
You'll see something.
Well, if only I'd come when I was in Asheville. You know what? Speaking of visitation, we got a baby that's going to be here any day now.
Oh, really?
Yes. Very exciting. And then after that, when I have some time, I will take you up on that. When it's like when my touring schedule aligns with being out there, which is I don't think that far away, man, I would be honored to meet your dad and to see one of these things firsthand. Honestly, my feelings get a little hurt Because sometimes I will pray. I'll try to call out to them. I'll reach out. Nothing. Dial tone, baby. They don't want to say hi to me. I get it. I'm yappy. I smell bad.
It's not that they don't want to say hi to you. It's that they're waiting when you're finally fully ready. And you will be. You know, it's strange because it's like the more we try, the more they're like, you're not quite ready. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's an internal attitude. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, that'd be amazing. And the offers on the table. You can come out anytime. We'll have
Ryan,
crowds
thank
of
you.
20 or 30, and we've had CIA program directors. I won't say who unless they haven't exactly told us we can reveal their names yet because it's so early, but we've had congressmen and senators at our property seeing things, and they're like blown away. We've had a couple of like billionaire type, venture capitalist type people, some Hollywood type people. I mean, people from all walks of life. And it's like we're finally now hitting this point where we're pushing out into the public where people are hearing this, but it's been happening, and it's been brewing since it all began. And this next part is why we were so swarmed by members of the CIA, the NRO. That's a name that people heard in that hearing. We've been swarmed by some NRO types, and NSA, Homeland Security, Naval Intelligence, DARPA. The list goes on and on and on. So the documentary comes out in 2008. Wasn't a good look. In our family, like internally, we called this the 5 years of darkness because from 2008 to 2012, we were treated like subhuman trash. I mean, like go to school, be laughed at, come home crying. My dad's out in town and people, my dad was a reputable construction mogul in town, so people knew him all around. And it's the South anyway, so people know each other like that in many cities. And we were just hated everywhere we went. Our own family shunned us, mocked us, reviled us, blah, blah, blah. So 2012, it's actually Easter. It's the weekend of Easter on a Sunday night. I guess Easter's on Sunday, right? Good Friday, then Sunday. So that Sunday night of Easter in 2012, Dad finally decides, I can't do this anymore. I can't deal with the ridicule and my children coming home crying and upset and being bullied. I can't do this. I'm done with it. I don't want anything to do with this. I should mention that between 2008 and 2012, the experiences never stopped. We did continue to see multiple entities, more orb-like sightings in the sky. I saw them immediately at 13 years old. Us kids were seeing them the whole time. And we had poltergeist activity in the house, light bulbs getting unscrewed, entities running around. My mom got shoved in the kitchen one time, all kinds of stuff like this happening. And my dad says, I'm done with all this. I don't want anything to do with it ever again. That night, Easter of 2012, he goes to bed. And at 3 a.m., a voice says, arise, like this deep, masculine, booming voice. And he gets out of bed, and he looks at the clock. It's 3 a.m., and it instructs him, get dressed. So he starts getting dressed. He gets his clothes on. He walks out back, and those entities that were on the light craft or whatever you want to call it from the 07 experience, they were outside in the backyard, and they were like beckoning, come with us. And they said, this is your burden. Hold on to this. Don't lose it. And they handed him an object. And it was like, imagine like the body of a small animal, like a chihuahua or something, but it had no legs, no head, no tail. It was just like the torso, but it was spiky and it was gnashing, and he would hold it and it was gnashing at his hands and it was hurting him. And they were like, don't lose this. They walk him through our backyard. He gets to our hunting dog kennels. We have this big L-shaped kennel for like a dozen or two hunting dogs. And my dad gets back there. The entities are gone at this point. And he throws it in there and he locks the kennel. And he turns around and there is a massive, ethereal, ghostly bull. And it charges through my dad. It knocks him on his back. He gets up and he rolls over on his hands and knees. And when he looks up before he stands up, there is a woman, a female, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, gown that is white, that twinkled like the stars, and it went from her neck down to her ankles, and she was floating 4 feet off the ground. She didn't move her mouth when she spoke, and she said, you know why I'm here. This is your burden. You have to tell your story. There is a new knowledge. We are going to awaken humanity into the age of Aquarius when the star Regulus aligns with the gaze of the Sphinx just before dawn in the constellation Leo. And you have to go out and tell your story. If you do not, you will be like Joel the Watchman, and the blood of devastation will be on your hands for not sharing what you know. And she said her name was Hathor, like the Egyptian deity. She said, but I've also been known by many names. I am the Divine Mother, the universal creation of all life. I have existed since the universal creation of all life. I am the Divine Feminine. And when this is restored into balance with the world is when we will awaken into the age of Aquarius. And she said that since the ancient time of all the old religions, the divine feminine has been suppressed. Even in the Bible, we see evidence of Mary, Mary, the mother of Jesus, was reduced to just being a human woman, but she's still worshipped. Why is that, right? Well, they took the truth. They turned it down to the feminine aspect of it is just a human. Everything else is God, though, right? Right. And she said that she is the secret missing part of the Holy Trinity. And go tell the story. We're going to help you along the way. And a couple weeks later, my dad and I, actually, I know you had just lived in Asheville. My dad and I drove to Asheville, and we went to a local MUFON conference. We get there, and he tells this story publicly for the first time. And he's getting heckled from the crowd. Boo, we want to hear about the river in 2007 that the Discovery Channel covered. Boo. And my dad starts crying because he's just being hated, and he just swore away talking about this, and he's telling about this lady experience. And something comes over him, and he says, there's going to be an earthquake this September of a 7.0 magnitude off the coast of Baja, California. And sure enough, it actually happened down to within 24 hours of when he predicted it. And then there was some key players in MUFON there who had friends in the intelligence community that went and told people that my dad had reported seeing this Marian apparition type thing. Next thing you know, within a year, NRO was on our door. A man by the name of Timothy Taylor. He was CIA.
Sorry, wait, what's NRO?
National Reconnaissance Office.
Okay.
It is a joint operation between the CIA, Air Force Intelligence, and NASA. They do top secret satellite type stuff for the Department of Defense and more. By 2012 or 2013, this NRO agent, Timothy Taylor, also known as the Invisible College. There's this small, you could say, elite group of academics, government types, scientists who are in the know on this subject, so to speak, and they have cutting edge experimental type technology. They got a hold of our story that Dad was having this sighting of this Marian apparition, and next thing you know, they're at our house and they're doing experiments with us and briefing us. I actually, Duncan, in 2013, this guy, Timothy Taylor, he came to my house and he put an exotic piece of metal in my hand. And when I say exotic, you know what I mean, right?
Well, I'm guessing. I mean, I've heard this.
Classified, not from Earth.
Yeah, right. That's what they call, like, parts of wreckage.
Or metamaterials, whatever.
Yeah, right. They have a lot of names for what is essentially stuff that's been recovered from these crash sites.
Right. He put this piece of metal in my hand, and he's at my house now, and he said, now I'm going to put this other piece in your other hand. Now, when you hold these two pieces, I want you to just kind of focus for a minute and tell me if you feel anything. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like 20 years old, you know. I'm not really, no, I don't really know much, you know. He put this stuff in my hand, and I felt this electricity running through my body, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel electricity. What's going on here? It didn't hurt me. It felt like a very calm, warm static running through my body. They weren't plugged in. They were just pieces of metal. And he was like, okay, cool. There's my answer. Go help me out. Get the rest of your family one by one. I got all three of my siblings, even my wife, who was just my girlfriend at the time. She happened to be there. My mom and my dad. One by one, he had us all hold these metals. And all six of us, all of us members of the Bledsoe family, we all felt this electricity. But when my dad held these metals in his hand, he was the last one to do it. His vision blacked out. And his muscles on his arm, at the time, he had big burly arms. I mean, he's a carpenter swinging hammers his whole life. Yeah. He had massive forearms. And his muscles were bulging out. They were like, the static electricity was sending convulsions through the muscles in his arm, and he was being rocked by like the energy like this. You can see me? Yeah. And he was like, what's happening? I can't see. My vision's blacking out. And this guy with the NRO, Tim Taylor, he looks at my dad, and he's like, oh my God. Why you? Why is this happening? I've only seen this happen with 3 other people. And my dad's like, what does this mean? And he said, well, this is our proof. We know that you're telling the truth, and we know that you have had face-to-face contact with interdimensional entities. Otherwise, your family would not have felt this energy. And My dad went on with this individual. They almost were involved in writing a book together through a professor named Diana Walsh-Pasolka. That never panned out. This character is mentioned in her book, American Cosmic. But long story short, my dad went on over the next couple years to do psychic experimental type research with him, developing technologies through psychic downloads. That was the image I sent you earlier on the Twitter DM with Tom DeLonge, my dad, and the young girl. Well, that young girl had experimental bone cancer type implants through technology that my dad helped them further with his psychic abilities. Long story.
Wow. Now look, let me just, interject here. I know this sounds nuts.
It does.
But go back and look at these hearings today. Listen to Grush as he's describing these things, not as aliens, not as extraterrestrials, but as non-human intelligence. He's not saying this, these are manifestations of Gnostic archetypes or biblical, figures or whatever, but he is basically saying extra dimensional intelligence.
That's the reality of it.
That's the reality. It's weirder than aliens.
Yes.
It's weirder than ETs. And this is, and your mom, I'm curious, earlier you mentioned that her sense of this is demonic.
Used to be.
Demonic. She's changed her opinion.
She's coming around, yes.
Coming around. So there's still for her.
Yes.
Because this is sort of the, of the what's coming from a lot of Christians or from religious people is they're they're not aliens. These aren't freaking aliens. These aren't extraterrestrials, and they're demons. This is the end of the world, and these are fallen angels that have come to visit us to sort of create the one world government and, Mark of the Beast stuff. I mean, this is when you hear when you hear an explanation, the classic explanation for why they're not giving us this data right away is because of the way it's going to impact a lot of cultures, a lot of religions, a lot of religious people are going to react to it in a negative way. They're not going to trust these things, even though the Bible is filled with stories of encounters with non-human intelligence.
Ezekiel, the wheel within the wheel.
The wheel within the wheel. And to see a high-ranking intelligence official basically saying, these things are non-human intelligence, extra-dimensional, holographic universe stuff. Yeah. This is a modern way of saying we are contacting angels. And also, I think it's worth noting that every encounter that your father had with these things, it follows the biblical story to a T, which is don't be afraid.
Yeah.
And you have to do this. Jonah and the whale, right? Jonah didn't want to do what God was telling him to do. Gets eaten by a whale, barfed out on a beach. Essentially, that's the story. I mean, the story is once you get picked for this sort of thing, there's no going back. Once you get picked and make the authentic call, which your dad did, maybe not fully knowing what he was doing.
Not at all. He had no clue what he was getting into.
Right. And that usually is how it works, is how can you know what you're getting into as a human? You really can't. But what's just fascinating is your story and all the other stories like it, they have this added credibility today that will not go away. It's not to say they're all true just because some form of disclosure is happening. I believe your story. It's not to say all of them are true, but going forward, we are entering a time where human consciousness is going to expand a little bit. Has to.
A lot of it.
It has to. A lot of it.
A lot of it.
I mean, it's a lot of it, I guess you would say. Yeah. I got to ask this, though. What happened to that shitty, lumpy Vienna sausage dog that the aliens handed your dad?
So they told him that it was a symbolic item. It was not a real physical item. It was symbolic. And what it was symbolic of was human nature being blind and not knowing which direction it's going and lashing out in this chaos and confusion. If you recall, it was gnashing at my dad's hands. It was painful to hold on to. It disappeared. He never saw it again. And
what
then,
a perfect symbol for that. A Vienna sausage gnashing,
Chihuahua.
limbless Chihuahua
torso.
thing. A torso, not even a head. Just what's more confused than an angry, sentient Chihuahua torso that has multiple mouths? I mean, that I don't know of a better descriptor for that aspect of humanity that pushes back against new ideas, that pushes back against new revelations. Just what's more confused than an angry, sentient Chihuahua torso that has multiple mouths? I mean, that I don't know of a better descriptor for that aspect of humanity that pushes back against new ideas, that pushes back against new revelations.
Right. So my dad ended up seeing the lady face to face in that capacity one more time the following year. In the Easter of 2013. So again, he's in bed, and then he's awakened by a bright light, and it's like he recalls being pulled into a bubble, like this space that is, I guess you could say, it's dimensional. He likes to say magical. One of my dad's funny quotes is he says everything's magical. But this space pulled him out through the roof. He's flying through the attic. He's flying out of the house, and next thing he knows, he's in space, and then he's zooming over Earth. And it showed him the pyramids, it showed him the Sphinx, and then it took him to this canyon. He doesn't know exactly where, but he thinks it's Utah. And my dad and I are very heavily considering starting our own YouTube show where we get an RV and we go to Utah and we try to make contact with this entity on camera. But anyway, so he's in this canyon and he sees her face to face again, and these entities who were in the original 07 encounter, not the little short 3 to 4 foot tall ones that are translucent like glass, but the 7 to 8 foot tall ones. When he sees them this time, they remove their physical appearance and they're glowing pure light. And he described them to me, and I'm not sure if he described this in his book, but I'm his son. I've lived with him my whole life basically. He told me they when they spoke in his mind, it was this singing of this heavenly like chorus language, and it radiated his soul where he was like exploding and just vibrating with joy and pure like intense energy when it was like a singing chorus, and they walked him through this canyon, and he comes face to face with a lady, and she's sitting on this carved out old geoglyph type throne, and he's face to face with her, and I want to say, I know this sounds fantastic. To me it sounds fantastic, but it happened, and that's all I can do is just keep telling it, and it sounds just as crazy to me as it does to you and everyone else. But so she's sitting on this throne, and she tells him, Amun-Ra is the hidden one. She tells him more about the alignment of Regulus and the Sphinx and the awakening age of Aquarius, and she said there is a dark group at the top of humanity who is very intentionally scripting out the book of Revelations in order to forcefully manifest an end-time cataclysmic event. But that it was written many aeons ago that the light will win, not to worry, the story's going to be told, and that the view of the dark group that they're going to push on humanity to try to deceive the world is that there is no God, there is no consciousness or spirit, that it is all a scary alien threat. That it's going to be strictly materialistic, biological. It's all aliens. It's all ET. There is no spirit. That's the view that humanity's in danger of being brainwashed into, and that it's more complex than that. It is very spiritual. And she told my dad that we come here because it is the journey of the soul, that we all come from the eternal place that we would recognize as the spirit world, or the non-material dimension, or so to speak, that essentially that we are reincarnating here on a journey, and that our collective consciousness is linked to the vibration of the earth, and that we are currently, humanity is in a very fearful polarity, and that we're harming the earth so badly that if we don't stop and get a hold of ourselves and awaken and switch to a loving polarity, that the earth will shake us off, because it has to self-preserve.
Right. Yeah, right. That of course, it's like that's just math.
It's an entity. It's a conscious entity.
I think it's interesting that, and I've always loved that the angels say, "Don't be afraid." Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting because the message your dad is being given is basically like it's the fear that they're capitalizing on. It's the fear. It's the warping of everything into some impending threat, or the rewriting of something. Like these are mechanical ships. These are, God, what do they call them in the hearing? It's the creepiest biologicals or some shit.
Yeah,
like biologicals, like really, like the way you would want to, you would talk about something that you wanted to blow up. Like it's a biological. It's not a, like us biological. It's goo. And that is really interesting. It really is. It's like, it really does seem to confirm, like, it's like it feels like your dad is getting like the direct download, like the direct message. And that message is being shifted in a way that it could be talked about publicly by people in the government. But it's the same message, like, because the message your dad is getting is there's a small group of people who are being controlled or in league with these dark forces.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it. And the way that it's being described publicly in hearings is there's a small group of career intelligence people and private contractors who are keeping this information from the public for their own personal power. I mean, it's not saying like they're in league with the devil or darkness or entities, but it is a Faustian agreement. I mean, it is a deal with the devil. If you decide to forego your own humanity in exchange for power, that is the satanic bargain. That is the deal. And so it's like they're saying the same thing, just in a slightly lighter, less metaphysical way.
Yeah. So I'm going to move forward just a little bit here. So we've talked about my dad for so long now, told that main story there. And I want to stress to the listener, it never stopped. It's still happening. And I think you said this comes out at the end of the week. So Tuesday of next week, after this airs, August 1st on the History Channel, we are going to be airing on an episode of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. It's going to be mind-blowing. I'm allowed to say this. There will be actual scientific data where my dad is able to demonstrate through cutting-edge EEG caps that he is psychically communicating with an interdimensional phenomenon. And there may or may not be some pretty amazing footage. But anyway, so we've covered that ground. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of my experiences, if you don't mind.
I love it.
So this started when I was 13, like I said, and by the time I was 18, I had so many sightings of things that were far up in the sky, like orbs, that I kind of had this chip on my shoulder when I would talk to my dad. I was the kid in the house that was never afraid to talk about this stuff. And then my brother, Chris Jr., God bless him, he was so traumatized when he started having these experiences face-to-face, straight up with entities. No orbs like me. I eased into it and saw orbs in the sky. Wow, Dad, that's cool. Junior was face-to-face with entities that were like manifest. It scared the crap out of him. It traumatized him so bad. He actually slept with my mom in the same bed for a few years. And that, for anybody to judge that or anything, it's like, grow up. I mean, think about this, the pure trauma that this man experienced, where he couldn't be alone. Like, my mom had to watch him fall asleep. He was so terrified as a kid, being shocked into this experience.
I get it.
He's okay now. He's healed now. He had to sleep with a light on in the room for many years. He would see these entities in his room. Now, naturally, I say this to convey that his experience was different than mine. His was not consciously trying to communicate with them and understand what they were. He was so initially terrified. He ran from it. He didn't want to talk about it for many years. It wasn't until I was 18 years old that I had a full-fledged conversation with my brother. Like, what happened? Like, tell me. Like, I knew what happened, but like, talk about it. Let's talk about it as brothers, you know? And he opened up, and we had this one long night where we had this long chat. And I turn around and I go to my dad and I'm like, Dad, you know, Chris Jr. had all these experiences and he doesn't even want them, you know, and yet here I am out here with you every night asking the sky, why can't I see something and I haven't seen any entities? What's going on here? I was kind of egotistical about it, you know, as any 18-year-old would be. And my dad
I'm
humbled me.
egotistical about it. I'm 48. Where are my orbs?
Listen, you're going to see orbs, Duncan. We're going to arrange that, but it's going to happen. But I'm out there, 18 years old. I'm like, where's my sighting, Dad? Like, I'm tired of seeing him so far away. I want something more. I want to speak to something. I want to see something like you and Junior did. He didn't even want it, you know? And Dad's like, Ryan, you gotta relax. You have to understand these aren't just aliens off in a ship somewhere spying on you with a long telescope. Woo! Looking at you from the atmosphere. Turn on your radar. Turn on your sensor. We're listening. He's talking like this. He makes fun of that materialistic version. Yeah. He's like, it's not like that, son. They're magical. They are behind reality. They're in another dimension. They hear your thoughts before you even think them. They know the past, present, and future. They're aware that you are thinking this way right now, and they're waiting for you to change and to be ready to embrace their magical nature. And I'm like, Dad, this is like, I can't understand this. I don't understand what you're telling me. And I swear to you, Duncan, this is one of the craziest things that ever happened to me. Understand that this is impossible for there to have actually been a physical cow there in the yard. Our neighbor had a fence with only goats, and then there was like a whole subdivision behind us without any farmland, and then the left side of the property was my grandma and grandpa's lot. No cows for 5 to 10 miles. I heard a cow moo right beside me, and I'm looking around like, whoa, what was that? And then I hear another cow, and then another cow, and we hear 4 to 5 cows, and I'm talking full-fledged loud moos for like 10 minutes. My dad and I are sitting there in silence, and he looks at me and he smiles. He's like, you know that was the lady, right? She appeared to me as a bull. It took me 5 years to understand that I had just experienced an auditory projection from these entities. You know, like I was in denial about it. Like, Dad, they don't have a sense of humor. Like, why are you this? That had to be a reason.
Sense of humor.
They do. But I didn't know that. I didn't understand that, you know, because I thought one way. This is what I was telling you earlier. I thought one way about it. I'm going to see it. I need to see it. And they mocked me playfully. Like, we're just going to moo at you like a cow.
They're
and
funny.
Lighten you up. They are. They're very funny. And they do a lot of funny things. They mooed at me. Like, lighten up. You know, we're playful. We're entities. We're kind of like tricksters, you know, but not in the evil way. So some years go by. I'm about 23 at this point now. And keep in mind, I'm 29 now, so this is still many years ago. I'm about 23 years old. I'm still going to church. I'm not quite in
Wait,
it all the way.
before you tell this part of the story, I want to tell you something really quick.
Okay.
You're the best, man. So
You're too kind.
Okay. The Midnight Gospel.
Love it.
You know those lantern-headed cow things?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Have I told you the story of where that came
On
from?
my podcast, but please, I would love to hear it again.
Yeah. So that's it was a DMT experience, and you know, much like you, wanting the juice, you know, wanting the self-transforming machine elves and the thing.
Right.
And what I saw was this bovine cow creature with a lantern head. And I remember looking away from it, trying to do the, you know, on other psychedelics, if you're seeing something, usually you look away, you look back, it's gone. Trying to do that, looking away and look back, and it just sort of like a cow just sort of moved, you know, a few feet ahead, not really aware of me, just being a lantern-headed cow. And in relation to your story, what a funny, you know, like for a human, like, show me the crazy thing. It's like, okay, how about we do like a cow, but it's got kind of like a technological lantern head. You know what I mean? That's a hilarious, funny. There you go.
We did have the same experience there when you think about it like that.
No, that's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
never thought of it because I hadn't heard that story. But like, that's a joke. That's like, what's one of the more like boring, docile creatures
that I
on
eat for
Earth?
lunch at McDonald's or something, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
there, but make it kind of glowy. And like, that's so funny. And I'm sorry, I wanted to interject that in there because if you look at some of these, maybe some of the things we've encountered, not from like the world that you're in, but from more often the psychedelic world, if you look at it as like a vision with a twist of comedy to it, because I've noticed generally when you run into intelligent people, they're funny. Like there's a so you would think of a highly intelligent sentience, whatever it might be, would also be funny. Why not? And it's a great way to sort of soften the mood a little bit. Lighten up.
yeah,
No big deal.
lighten up.
Let's have some fun.
Yeah, relax,
Continue.
let
Sorry,
go.
man.
You're too freaked out about it, kid. I'm like sitting here, I want to see an entity so bad. Well, we're gonna moo at you, and it took me 5 years to stop being in denial about that. That's how long, of a span of time it can take to process a supernatural experience. It can take longer. So moving forward just a little bit, I was still very Christian at this time, but in the sense that I was like, but there's definitely UFOs. I'm down with like things like reincarnation. Like I'm open to these kinds of things, but I still was like, kind of going to church. And it was one day when I was 22 or 23 years old. At the time, I had just gotten out of college. I didn't really have anything lined up. And my wife and I were about to move here to Wilmington, North Carolina, which is where I live. So I was like, well, I don't need to get wrapped up in anything too serious. So I was working construction with my brother, Chris Jr., for a good year or so. So we were just hanging out all the time, talking, cutting up on the job, talking about all this stuff. And I go home, and one night I forgot to say, when I had finished college, I got a religion minor because I was so mind wrecked by the experiences. I got a psychology major because when I was 14, I watched Dr. Michael O'Connell, the John Mack protege. I watched him regress my dad, and I was like, oh my God, I want to be a psychologist. Then I went to college, and then I started taking religious courses and dissecting the Bible and learning about things like Gnosticism and all this. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so fascinating. This is nothing I've ever learned in church. And I took so many courses in this area that the chair of the religious department was like, if you just take one more, you can actually graduate with a minor in religion. And I think it was meant to be because...
We have the same degree.
Really?
I majored in psychology, minored in religion.
No way.
Yes, sir.
That is bizarre. That is truly bizarre. Wow. And in those studies, I learned about Gnosticism, and it awakened something in me like, oh my gosh, this is so deep, And the different subsects of heretical Christians who had these far out there hippie ideas of like reincarnation and awakening, and this being the nightmare realm and all that. And I did forget to mention that the lady, or the cosmic mother, or whatever you want to call her, she did tell my dad that this is the perilous realm where we come to suffer. It's like a journey coming here to grow. But when we die, we return to the eternal place, and we become as they are in orbs of light. Your soul travels in these orbs of light. And anyway, so moving forward, I had learned about Gnosticism, and I was like, this is super cool. But then I learned about Hermeticism, and I was like, this is cool, but I was still at that level of awakening where like 90% of the world is, where it's like, oh, it's all Illuminati, it's all evil, right? Like you're too kind of scared to tiptoe into this occult knowledge, so to speak, right?
Yeah, sure.
But you're aware of it, and you're mystified, and you're like, what does it mean?
Yeah.
So I had a dream one night that Osiris was standing at the foot of my bed. I didn't know anything about Osiris, as anybody could probably verify immediately. Being a Pentecostal or any type of Christian means you are strictly forbidden to study any sort of other religion. I wasn't studying Egyptian religion. The only thing I knew was this lady told my dad, I am Hathor, but I also go by many other names, and the hidden one is Amun-Ra. And I was like, what does this mean? I'm too scared to study. You know what I mean? So then I had this experience. I have the dream Osiris is standing at the foot of my bed, and my dream changed, and there were frogs hopping around my room, and I start chasing them, and I catch one, and it dies in my hand, and then it comes back to life. It reincarnates, and I remembered feeling joy. And I woke up the next day, and I go to work with my brother, and the whole day I'm like, kind of 1,000-yard stare, like, dude, I had this extreme dream last night about some Egyptian god. I don't know what it means. I thought, isn't this an evil deity? Like, should I be worried? I get home that night and I start studying Osiris, and I realize that it's the same story as Christ, as Krishna, as all these other, Hermes Trismegistus, so on and so forth. And I learn about Hermeticism. And the reason I bring all this up is I believe that these entities gave me these dreams and these experiences and kind of like set me on this path to learn about the wisdom traditions, to be able to take these experiences of my father and be able to break them down to audiences in a way that's not so scary.
Right.
Because to put it simply, like, these beings came out the gate talking about reincarnation, and I went from, being a 15, 16-year-old kid having a Pentecostal dad to all of a sudden he's talking about reincarnation. And I'm like, Dad, what the hell? That's a sin, right?
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely. Yeah, they're like, it does seem like part of the mode of communication is like, they need translators, and they need translators for all the different people, like for everybody. They need translators for fundamentalist Christians. They need translators for scientific materialists. They need They want to convey this stuff, and they have different methods of doing that according to the mind that they're communicating with. It is not one flavor, so to speak, of message.
Right. What about the Hindu?
Right. It's filled with all kinds of symbols, but within the symbols, you run into the same pattern, which is generally, something to do with rebirth, resurrection, the dark night of the soul, temptation, crucifixion, hopelessness. I mean, it's literally the story cycle. I mean, if you look at any story, it has within it, generally built into it, some form of resurrection. The catharsis is the moment when the most hopeless place, when there is no way the hero could prevail, the hero prevails. Yeah. And that produces the catharsis that everyone resonates with. And when that doesn't happen in a movie or a story, it's a tragedy. It's horrible. And what is more perilous than being in a situation where there is this swath of hopelessness? You look out at the world, you watch the news. Why would you feel any kind of sense that things are going to get better, that things would change, that there's some redemptive possibility? Because it doesn't seem like that. And that is a perilous place to find oneself. That is the valley of the shadow. That's the valley of the shadow of death.
Yeah.
I mean, what better description for the realm we're in than
it's like hell.
It's not even so. Well, it's not quite. I like the. Buddhism has hell. Did you know that?
Not quite. I'm not very familiar with Buddhism. At minimal.
People don't realize that the Buddhist cosmology, at least some lineages of Buddhism, have built into it the hell realms, and that the Buddhist hell is actually in some ways way worse than the Christian hell. Christian hell, you just get your lake of fire, eternal damnation, incineration, if you want to take it literally. The Buddhist hell, at least one of them, is cold. Ooh. It's not hot. It's
like
cold
Diablo
hell.
3.
Yes, my friend, you're frozen, and you are suffering so much that there is no hope. Like, I think of it as like, imagine when you get your finger slammed in the door, like how bad that hurts. Now extend that by thousands and thousands of years. That's what you're feeling. And then try to meditate, try to pray, try to expand your consciousness in a state of profound, debilitating, horrific pain. That's the Buddhist hell. That's probably the Christian hell. So this realm, even though it is in many ways degraded, horrible, painful, full of suffering, tragic, we still have we have the mental capacity to overcome that,
I like that.
To resurrect, to die and come back to life in a lifetime. That is the story.
Something I learned from you, and I promise you, like, I'm being straight up with you here. I'm not bluffing, and I'm gonna bring it home with some symbolism here that I have on hand. something I learned from you watching. So my co-host Nick on our Bledsoe Setso podcast, you had met him. You came on the podcast. He was a big fan of yours for many years, and he made me aware of you. I was the kind of guy dealing with my own experiences, had CIA knocking on our door. I wasn't really like in these worlds, knowing all these people. I wasn't aware of podcasts, so to speak. So he got me onto you. He got me onto some others, and it was his and my producer's idea to do the podcast, and we just ran with it. So I started binging the Midnight Gospel. I'm like, oh my God, we can do this, you know? And in the last episode, I like to watch things. I don't know if this was your intention, but I watch things through the lens of what is the author trying to tell me? Is there esoteric imagery? And in the last episode of the Midnight Gospel, Clancy says something to the effect of, I can feel my hands, almost like I'm Jesus. And then he says something like, no, I'm kidding. You know, feeling the energy in the hands. And I was thinking maybe there's some sort of esoteric Christ consciousness metaphor there. But anyway, so then in the last episode, he's, you know, I think it's after the cops come after him and he like breaks the simulation or whatever. And he's on this like kind of interdimensional bus. Yeah. What symbol is spinning on the bus? It's the Metatron's cube.
Yeah.
You see that behind me?
Yeah.
That was because of you.
Oh, that's so cool. You know, we had a lot of people working on that show, and I try not to like give my own opinions regarding the symbolism in that show, but we had a lot of people working on that show. That was a really fun, the writer's room for that show. It was called a writing summit. Like for 2 weeks we had, you know, and we did have a lot of like esoteric experts on the show. Maja Da'u, the White Witch, and Jason Louv.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Damien Eccles, as controversial as he is, still an amazing episode, and like it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, Eccles would say, you know, one thing I love that he says is, you know, if you want to find your grimoire, if you want to find the ultimate book of magic, it's the Bible. Like if you want to, it's all there. Like you don't need to get some like hardcore esoteric grimoire. It's right there. Like everything's right there for you if you want it. And, you know, this is the quality of the time that we're in. I mean, we are entering a time when we're going to have to deal with the fact that like these encounters that your father has had, that you have had, that your family has had, that so many others have had, these have been going on forever. These have been happening forever. And the method of describing them has been limited to whatever the particular technology was at the time, the symbol set of the time. I mean, chariots, you know, there were no clouds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God rode on a cloud.
You're
fire.
right. And also it's like you realize there's a kind of like wardrobe that the truth wears. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And a quilt or something. And the quilt is made up of the symbol set of whatever the particular culture is that encountered this thing that we're talking about. I mean, it's not going to like dress up in a Western symbol set in the East. It's not going to dress up in an Eastern symbol set in the West. It's going to try to communicate according to like anybody. Like I wouldn't go to China and expect them to learn my language. I would learn their language. I would learn Chinese and then use that to talk to them. And so that seems to be what we're talking about here as far as the Osiris stuff goes, or the archetypical pattern that shows up again and again and again in world mythologies.
Yeah, it's like Christ, Krishna, Buddha consciousness. That's my interpretation. Like I believe, I mean, I just got to say it. I really do believe the synthesis of the mystery traditions. And there's a whole other element there too. Like some of our government contacts getting me in touch with a Rosicrucian. And actually there was a guy in Asheville who I had gotten in touch with, and I went and met with him and did some studies with him. And after meeting him, I started having more dreams about like Egyptian hieroglyphs and things. And he was all into like Rudolf Steiner and Helena Blavatsky and all this really deep stuff. And it really opened my eyes to how the universe works, you know, and a lot of this Rosicrucian / mystery tradition stuff. I mean, it's like, it really, like a puzzle, it really just fit with the experiences that we were experiencing with these entities, you know? And I tend to think that it is true that if I had to put it in as plain terms as possible, if I had a microphone to speak to the whole earth, I would probably say something like, We are fractal representations of the original mind. We call it God. It is the eternal consciousness. I would just mic drop, walk away. That's what I believe, And I would say these beings, these lights that appear, many religions call them angels, many religions call them Buddhas, ascended masters. They are benevolent beings who are coming and guiding us towards awakening consciousness. Mic drop, walk away.
Don't walk away yet. Did I tell you
not from this. I mean, if that hypothetical scenario.
Did I tell you the story, the orb, Neem Karoli Baba's orb story? Did I tell you that?
No.
Oh, okay. This is a good one. You're going to love this. I could find the documentary. Hold on. Let me see if I can find the name of it, because I'm sorry, y'all, if you've heard me talk about this before, listeners, but let me just look this up real quick. It's a really great documentary, too. Documentary around us. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Oh, that's definitely intriguing. That we did a Ram Dass episode and talked about Ram and your experience, just studying your material and influencing us, and that did not come up in any of my.
It's called Brilliant Disguise, and it is about one of Neem Karoli Baba's closest associates. Casey Tiwari was his name. It's so good and it's so intense, and you really do feel like you're getting what we call darshan, or like you're like, as the documentary continues, you feel the spirit of Neem Karoli Baba. But one of the stories in there, and everyone, it's called Brilliant Disguise. You can find it at ramdas.org. It's on you. You can find it there. The Samadhi of Casey Tiwari. So they were in India. He never left India. So they're in India hanging out with Neem Karoli Baba, Ram Dass's guru, my guru, disembodied guru. And they're at the base of this mountain. I can't remember which mountain. And these orbs appear. Everyone sees it.
Wow.
So there's orbs floating everywhere. People around Neem Karoli Baba, they're obviously freaking out. They're seeing the orbs. And they're like, I think they were saying, like, we have to get cameras. Like, you have to come back. We have to take pictures of this. Like, and like, he laughed and he's like, what? You want everybody to say that Neem Karoli Baba calls orbs? Is that what you want? Like, I don't want, he never wanted, he like, wouldn't even let people, like, if he found out you were writing down stuff he said, he would make you throw it away. He didn't like that stuff. But then he explained to them what it was. He said, there are these beings, just what you're saying, ascended masters. That's exactly what he said. There's these beings that I can't remember the exact name for it. They went up into the mountains to meditate. They're very old, and that's who they are. They're these ascended master beings that, and like, it's just so fascinating, the parallel between that story and your dad's story. Yeah. Like, these are, and they show up around certain people. They don't show up around everybody. They're more inclined to, like, say hello to certain types of people. And yeah, check it out. Brilliant Disguise. It's in there. I was going to try to find the clip before our podcast to play it for you. But yeah, orbs are, this is not
it's the real thing. Orbs are the phenomenon. And I have to specify, they're that's not their only form. I mean, there have been times where I have seen entities out of orbs. They are actual entities, but when they are traveling through dimensions, it looks like an orb of light. And I think about it like, if we are a three-dimensional being, me and you and everyone else listening and everyone else alive here on this realm, if we are a three-dimensional entity, that five-pointed star, the pentagram that everybody thinks is so scary and evil, I certainly used to, it means something pretty significant. It's like we interpret reality through the five senses or the five elements or whatever, It's like consciousness ascending through these senses. Everything I've ever known, I've experienced through my eyes or my ears or my mouth or my nose or my skin or my tongue, taste, whatever. I don't know any data otherwise, conventionally.
Right.
If we were biological beings who were going to interpret the data of an entity that is higher frequency, interdimensional, higher vibrational, it probably would be so advanced our brain couldn't understand the make of it. It probably would just appear like a flash of light, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's coming from a higher place, it makes sense. But I think those things can slow themselves down to have a form that we can grasp, that they have like a humanoid look or a shape or a figure, or even look a little material if they need to. Or like, I'll give you a clue here into some of these top secret research programs. They might leave some metals behind for the government to find and advance their technology. That actually happens. That's actually a place called the Giving Field.
What?
The Giving Field in New Mexico. Yes, these entities have been seeding the advancements of technology throughout time. And I've actually met people, again, in the NRO, CIA, NASA, etc., who are super geniuses, who had to report to the Pentagon how they came up with their experimental breakthrough patents, and it was entities appearing in their room and flashing patents in their mind, and then boom, new invention that's cutting edge. That stuff actually happens. It's top secret.
I mean, it's not top secret. Read the story of Tesla.
True. Yes.
It's not top secret at all. Like,
it
our
still
entire
happens now.
Modern society, the way that we use electricity, came to somebody in a vision where he saw light when he was thinking about Faust. He was like contemplating some passage from Faust. He was thinking about Faust, vision of light, and we get alternating current. We get engines. I mean, give me a break. Like, again, like, I think like we're all just going to have to like suck it up a little bit here. We're going to have to grow up a little bit here. It's like, I get it. It's somehow, in the most mundane, dark way, comforting to imagine this is all there is. You're just atoms, baby. You're just atoms that have, like, as a kind of like byproduct of being harmonized in the way your atoms are, some diluted form of self-awareness. And when you die, it's all over. And that's it. And yes, some weird slurpy beings and ships are coming because they want to scope us out. That was the creepy thing, by the way. The question, are they like analyzing us to fight us? Remember that in the hearing? That's basically what they were saying, like setting the groundwork for maybe like we need to attack these motherfuckers. Or the hilarious, this is U.S. airspace. It's like, what?
I'll tell you a great, I'll tell you a really cool story, and I got a photo here to show you. I know the listener won't be able to see this, but like you can see here, my dad has personally been escorted through NASA. Wow. That's the guy I told you about who was second in charge of Blue Book, and then I'm going to show you the NRO guy. Actually walked my dad. You can see here's a photo of my dad in a NASA hangar with some of their cutting edge like jets that can fly in orbit. They can chase rockets and film them. And then I got one more photo here. You can see that like my dad is at Mission Control here. In 2014, he got a full total clearance tour. He walked all the way through Mission Control with a member of the Invisible College / NRO, CIA, Air Force, NASA, et cetera, et cetera. He claimed he was in the Illuminati, but whatever. And that's another story. And he brought my dad to NASA, to Mission Control. He took him in there and he showed him a video of a dummy warhead shooting up to space. And in this video, again, I want to stress for the listener, this is inside of Mission Control in Cape Canaveral, meaning only like 300 living people, supposedly, from what they told him, have been in this building. Only 2 living presidents, I think, have been like in some of the rooms that my dad was walked through. Why would they do that? Well, because we're persons of interest, and they brought Dad there to get his impression on some of their videos. So they showed Dad this classified video of a dummy warhead going into space. An orb of light swirled around the dummy warhead seamlessly and hit it with a few bursts of light, and the thing tumbled into the water. And this guy said, "Chris, why do you think the beings did that? Why did they disable the dummy warhead and destroy it?" And Dad said, "Well, you were trying to sneak a real one into space, weren't you?" And he looked at Dad and he was like, "How'd you know that?" And Dad's like, "I don't know. That's just how it works. It just comes to me." And then they took him into a room, another room in the Mission Control building, and they sat down at this table with some of the top minds, scientists at NASA. And Dad was like, "I had a dream last night. I had a very vivid dream that space is a lot less of a vacuum than we are made to understand. It's more like water. And in my dream, there were these strange cosmic like whales, or he didn't say whales. It was like squids or octopus, just kind of. They're these entities that exist in a negative dimension out there in space, and they're alive. And then he said, and then my dream changed, and I was on Mars, and I saw Bigfoot. But a long time ago, Bigfoot lived in another place, like another planet or another dimension, and they had gotten to some level of technology where they destroyed themselves with a cataclysm, and the shock of the billions or trillions of souls being eviscerated immediately out of their bodies was so profound in the psychic realm that the guardian, again, this is all in my dad's dream. This is the information that came to him from the dream. He said that the guardians that I have seen and deal with whisked their collective souls and fashioned them more primitive bodies that still had interdimensional capabilities. And that's Bigfoot, and they travel between Mars and Earth. My dad's sitting here telling the NASA scientist stuff about his dream he had the night before, and he looked at my dad and he said, "You are literally the most well-informed person I've ever met. How do you know this stuff?" And Dad's like, "I don't know. It's just how it works. I have dreams. I have visions." And then it came out, there was declassified. I can't remember what it was called. It was like the Farsight program or something. The remote viewers were trying to remote view Mars back in the 1980s, and a lot of that same stuff was being described in their remote viewing visions.
Bigfoot?
Yeah.
That is, man, of all the stuff you're saying, I'm going to leave that one in my, I'm not quite sure about that, but I love it. I'll take it. At this point, it's like, look, we're going to have to get better. It's just like, yeah, the world might not be as mundane as we have leaned into.
It's not.
The world might not be. And then, like, the sinister thing is, the reason you think the world is so mundane is because you've been taught to ignore your connection with a magical universe. You've been intentionally misled to not tune into that universe, and instead to, like, keep turning back to the most surface level, the surface of the surface. And that is really sad. Every kid knows about this stuff. Every kid is connected to this stuff. Like, we're born knowing this innately, like the way fish can just swim. Yeah. But then over time, you forget, you get dim. And, I think if we're talking about light as a manifestation of some higher intelligence, the term Illuminati becomes a little less sinister, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, you find out that's the highest degree of the Rosicrucians.
Right. Yeah.
Which is like, what does that mean? I've come to realize, I don't know, I don't have all the answers. I've come to realize maybe the Illuminati in itself is a psyop, and it's not as evil as we thought. And like, the real bad guys are, whoever's the top of, military, or, the global finance, or whatever. You know how it goes. Big pharma, big whatever. There are people who are in charge. Are they Illuminati? I don't know. Because the Rosicrucians say the Illuminati are some of the most enlightened people on the planet who have the mysteries of consciousness and are illuminated. So I don't know, man. I try not to use that term in that way anymore.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's like, it would be very disappointing to find out that the Illuminati were some kind of heavy-handed, power-hungry assholes. Because anytime I've run into people who are super intelligent, they really stop caring about power, at least in the way, most that rotten book, 48 Laws of Power, or like grind culture people, or, people who are into like big,
manipulating people. And
that to me always seems like a manifestation of insecurity or fear or something. You're so scared of people that you want to control them. Whereas like when you run into like really intelligent people, they seem to just let you be who you are. And then even better, they seem to really love who you are. And they don't really look at who you are now as the sum total of you, but they know you're a process. And they see where that process is going. And, they say that like one of the qualities of enlightenment in Buddhism is that you can, when you can see when everyone will get enlightened. Like maybe not in this lifetime. You don't just see their past lives. You see the trajectory of their karma and at what point they wake up, and that gives you this like ability to really unconditionally love people, because you're seeing, whatever bullshit you're encountering, the fear, the the people who think that they're like getting away with tricking you, or all the childish stuff. You don't see that as all they are. You see how those are threads that are evolving towards something beautiful. And so that's what, when you're around these people, apparently you get to experience that in you, just because they see it, and the act of them seeing it lets you feel it. They accelerate your evolution just by being around them, supposedly.
I love that.
Isn't that cool? Man,
Yeah.
I could talk to you forever. This has been a delight, man. I am buzzing right now with joy. This is such a cool story. Your story, you're so brave.
Thank you.
I'll tell you some things offline. I'm afraid to talk about some of this stuff publicly, but I think there is something so courageous about you, something so courageous about the many people who are coming forward right now, because who wants to hold a wiener dog torso that wants to bite your hand? Not me.
Yeah.
I'm mad at my poodle.
Yeah.
And so, everyone who's like taken up this squirming, rotten dog, who's willing to hold something that will bite you just for you telling the truth, I think is a hero these days, and is moving global consciousness towards, I think, a wonderful place. So thank you. Much love to your family. And remind us, when can we watch your History Channel show?
August 1st at 10 p.m. Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, obviously on the History Channel.
And your dad's book.
UFO of God. UFO of God. Hard to mess up.
And of course, the wonderful podcast, Bledsoe Said So.
Yes, Bledsoe Said So. My name is Ryan Bledsoe.
And the Patreon.
Full disclosure, yes, we have a Patreon of Bledsoe Said So, but we have a Patreon show where I'm super candid about letting go of my trauma. It's called Full Disclosure. Yeah.
All the links you need to find Mr. Bledsoe are going to be at DougAtrussell.com. Godspeed, my friend. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
That was Ryan Bledsoe, everybody. Check out his podcast, Bledsoe Said So. Check out his wonderful Patreon. And of course, order his dad's book, UFO of God. Is that the best title for a book ever? I think so. A big thanks to our sponsors. And of course, thank you for listening. We will be back later this week. Until then, I love you.